Okay, welcome to Gen X Medic. We're going to be talking about American Sirens. This is the book of Freedom House, the first true advanced life support agency in the country as we know it today. Literally everything we do today comes from this. And I'd heard about it. I finally got to read this book. I mean, Kevin Hazard deserves all kinds of credit for doing this. John Moon, I would love to meet the man, buy him a bourbon, and just say, thank you for everything you did, because my profession is better for these people.
Absolutely.
And so Kari Ernst, this is the lovely Miss Kari. She is an expert on Freedom House. She is amazing. She's been a friend of mine online for years from EMS groups. I remember reading her blog many years ago. Yes, I read your blog. Yes, yes. See, this is how you make someone blush.
Yes, yes, yeah,
But,
wow.
to be honest, the most amazing thing about this, people will be like, well, it involves Black people, or it involves, what it is these things still exist across in EMS. You still have the same type people who are usually lower middle class or poor, going and giving up their physical safety to make the world a better place. They're willing to put that on the line for both respect in the community and because they see a problem and they want to fix it. I mean, that's my story. I know it's Kari's.
Hey everybody, this is a puppy training tutorial compilation of.
Are you training puppies? You're muted.
That was weird. Sorry. No, all of a sudden
okay.
I have music playing in the background. I was like, what is going on?
But
there we go.
This needs to be, in my opinion, we need to know more about this. The story needs to be told. And it's those of us who are trying to make a community for EMS need to tell this story. So Kari, introduce yourself. Tell us about Freedom House.
So my name is Kari. I've been in EMS for 20 years. I think I officially earned my dinosaur pin now, if they still give those out.
Welcome to the club.
Yes, I know. I'm old. But yeah, I've been in EMS for 20 years, been a paramedic since 2007, 2008. But I got my start in Pittsburgh. So that's where I started as an EMT. That's where I got my paramedic cert. I've worked pretty much outside of working in a couple of different states here and there. Pretty much just worked in Pittsburgh. And I credit my start in EMS to Freedom House, because as a kid, you know, we hear a lot about representation, and, you know, not trying to get too political, but representation is such a huge thing, especially for anyone. That doesn't matter race, gender, sexuality, whatever. It is important that kids especially see themselves in the careers, in the sports, in the things that they want to be. So growing up, I watched Rescue 911 like it was my job. Watched Rescue 911. I watched Emergency. Yeah, you know, just aged myself right there. But I watched all of those things, and in all of them, I didn't see myself. I didn't see myself as a woman. I didn't see myself as a Black person. I'm sitting there and I'm looking and I'm going, okay, well, I guess fire and EMS is something that only white guys do. You know, not Black women, not Black people, not women, period. Something only white guys do. So I got really, really lucky because my parents said, well, the very first paramedics in the country came from Pittsburgh, came from right here, like right here. I mean, they took me to the site where they dedicated the historical marker. It sounds silly now, but it is literally it's between a bank and a cell phone store, the placard. But yeah, I got to have my parents tell me, look, the first paramedics came from Pittsburgh. This is where they came from. And by the way, they were all Black. The very first command physician which to me is just incredible, was a woman, Dr. Nancy Caroline. She went out as a nurse. She designed the EMS Bible, the paramedic Bible, hand drawn, the first edition of emergency care in the streets. I mean, what more can you ask for? CPR started here. I started in Pittsburgh. What more, this rich, vibrant history. But then as I got older and I started in EMS, I turned 16, became an EMT. I kept hearing about Los Angeles, Seattle, Miami. Nobody was talking about Freedom House. And I remember sitting there just kind of going, why isn't this being talked about? Why does everyone say that Los Angeles was the first? Why does everyone say that Miami was the first? Why is everyone, when you talk about the birth of EMS, you hear the big names: Seattle Medic One, Miami-Dade, Los Angeles. And I would sit here and go, but Pittsburgh, we were the first. Hello, April 15th, 1965. We were the first. And at that point, I just made it my job to get that story out. And even I got very lucky during paramedic school. We got to meet Chief John Moon and several other Freedom House medics. They came to talk to our class, and seeing the people who held the very first paramedic licenses in the country. So, paramedic number 00001. Who can say that they've seen like the first paramedic card? And not only did I get to see the first paramedic cards, but I got to meet and talk to the people. One of my favorite stories to tell is I was out for an evening, and I got into a cab in Pittsburgh, started talking to the driver, just bantering back and forth. And he asked what I was doing. And I said, oh, well, we just had our medic class reunion. He said, oh, you're a paramedic? And I said, yes. He goes, well, I was a Freedom House paramedic. The driver of my taxi was a Freedom House paramedic. And I just lost it, because I thought, this is absolute fate that I got to be in this particular taxi with this particular person and got to talk to him. And it's, especially in the last several years, it's become this fervent thing, because this generation is unfortunately dying out. We're slowly but surely losing these paramedics, these pillars of history that never got their just due. And we all know why they didn't get their just due.
Yes.
So I feel like it's my job to educate others, to make sure that their story isn't lost to history. So,
well, these guys were rebels, okay? They did something. And even if you want to be that person who wants to ignore the fact that they were black, they were also people who literally said, I'm not going to do the way you wanted to do. This is being done wrong. They joined up to make a difference. And you add in the fact that at the time they were black, and this was a horrible time to be black.
right.
These people this is a story that need to be told. I get so irritated when I hear stories. I'm like, that's okay, that's nice. This is the stories that need to be, the people who show that it doesn't matter who you are, what you come from. This doesn't matter. That hard work, that determination, that grit to be better is what makes anyone a worthwhile human being, and the people who try to make the world a better place. I'm sitting there, I'm a 20-year paramedic, 24 years doing this. And I'm reading the first scene in this book. I was telling you offline. It literally, I about dropped the book, because not the same story, but when I first got into this, I worked in a rural area, and we had to come over to the city to bring over critical patients all the time. And one of the first city paramedics I ever worked or interacted with was a black guy named Tom. Tom was one of the most humble and decent men I've ever known in my life. I can now call this man a friend and a mentor because I now work for that service. If he tells me I'm doing something wrong, I just put my head down. I mean, you know, he can shame me because he's just that amazing of a paramedic. And he became a paramedic where he started out, black men didn't do that. You want me to tell you, if the man tells you to jump, I'll make up the most ridiculous treatments. And if he says to do it, you just do it because you assume it's right. He's that good. And he's just a good, humble man. And I'm about to loan the book to him once I'm done with all this, because he means that much to me. Okay. I mean, you don't know, being a poor kid from a crappy service wearing a crappy uniform, and this guy gave me the respect of being nice to me when most people look down on us because, well, you know how it is. You come from an area that's got bad EMS. The good medics look down on them until you prove you're not one of them.
Right.
This man had that within him. So I'll never forget him, and I'm proud to call him a friend. Well, he was working as a supervisor one night, and a friend of mine who I'd started with, the guy I took my very first ambulance call with, was going home on hospice. And I saw the run go out, and I asked, is it okay for me to ride? Someone needs to ride home with him. Because his family couldn't. His mom was invalid, his brother was dead. And there was no one that could go home with him. Someone needed to ride with him. And he said, yeah, not a problem. And I rode home with him. And I'm going back to look at the first story where John's talking to one of the guys who trained him on it has to be this guy's worst day. And he talks him down and gets him help. And that hit my soul. I mean, that hits you where it matters, because our brothers and sisters that help us in this, they matter to us, Kari. You know this. I mean, and this book is the story of EMS and what it's meant to be.
Right.
And these men were criminals, homeless. They were people who pulled themselves up from the dregs and built something that was just amazing and was saving people's lives and making the world a better place. And for us not to tell that story, for paramedics to not tell that story, is disgraceful, period. Take anything else out of it. That's the story that needs to be told. The fact that it's African-American men in this time just makes it that much more important to be told, because that enhances the story and what we should be.
And it's, once I really started digging into it, I realized one of the biggest reasons why the story is hidden is because you'd have to explain why. The why is what makes people uncomfortable. To explain, to sit there and you say, yes, the very first paramedics came from the city of Pittsburgh, and the very first 25 paramedics in the country were 25 Black men and women. And they would say, and the next question is, well, what made them start EMS? And you have to tell them, because the Black people that lived in the Hill District of Pittsburgh were not getting medical care. They were at as we all know, during that time, it was funeral homes that would come and pick you up, or the police department. So the Hill District is in the city of Pittsburgh. It actually, kind of, if you ever go there and, anytime you come to Pittsburgh, we will go on a tour, and I can, we'll drive through the Hill District.
Oh,
But
I'd love to.
it kind of sits over what we call the Golden Triangle. And so it's on a hill kind of over downtown Pittsburgh. And they would call the city of Pittsburgh to come to take you to the hospital, or they'd call the local funeral homes, and the local funeral homes and the police departments wouldn't come. My own mother tells me the story about how she had to call the ambulance for her mother. Well, I had to call somebody to come get her mother. Her mother was born in 1956. So, you know, she was there for a while before Freedom House. And she had to, nobody would come because she lived in the, they lived in the Black neighborhood. So that's why Freedom House started, because Black men and women would call the funeral home, call the police department, and they would refuse to come. And so your family member would either lay on the floor dead until you could find somebody to come get them, or sick until you could get them to the hospital. And they said, you know what? We don't want this to be a thing anymore. Not only that, but the mayor of Pittsburgh at the time had a heart attack and died. And Dr. Sapper went, you know, this wouldn't have happened if we had a way to get him to the hospital. And then Dr. Sapper's daughter died. That's where CPR came from. So all of these things came together because of, for lack of a better phrase, medical racism. They would not come into the Hill District. The police department, the funeral homes would not come into the Hill District to take people to the hospital. And where the Hill District is, there's a hospital, Allegheny General Hospital, level 1 trauma center. 7 minutes away, even in traffic, if that. And people died. Mercy Hospital. Mercy Hospital is a level 1 trauma center. It used to be a standalone hospital. Now it's UPMC Mercy. Depending on where you are in the Hill District, you can throw a rock and hit it, and you don't have to be that strong. Not being able to get to that hospital. And so they went, we don't want this to be a thing anymore. And Freedom House originally was finding jobs for Black men and women who lived in the Hill District, providing community care, this community gathering spot, helping people find jobs, helping people get groceries, helping people get loans, small business loans, house loans, during a time where Black people were not given the same ability to get any of that stuff. And they went, why don't we start our own ambulance so that our people can get this care?
And the thing that amazed me is they didn't stop at just doing what everybody else was doing. Like, no, we're going to do better. And they did. And they didn't just do better. They wound up setting the standard. That's the most amazing thing about it. And that's really so much about it. You know, you and I've had evidence-based medicine, discussions. We've had all these conversations, and we're both sitting here, and these guys were doing that, God, 40-something years ago, 50 years ago, and that's amazing to me. And that's, one guy gets the first field to the, maybe in the country, but definitely in the area.
Right.
And that's how much the world's changed.
Yeah, I got to speak with Chief Moon in an interview, and he talked about how we were just kind of like an off, sidebar conversation, and we started talking about Narcan. And he goes, and I said something like, yeah, we've just kind of transitioned into doing 0.4 milligrams. We're not really trying to wake people up anymore, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, oh, well, that's how we started. And we talked about how things have come full circle. He's like, yeah, no, we used to not wake him up. And he's like, I never, because, Chief Moon, he worked for the city of Pittsburgh for up until 2004 or 2005. And he talked about, oh yeah, we used to not wake them up. We used to just give them, 0.4 milligrams of Narcan. And if that didn't work, we would just tube them. And I went, so I didn't have to fight them the entire time. Like, and kind of laughed, because all of this, what we, we know as evidence-based medicine was stuff that they were doing in the 60s.
Uh,
We just stopped doing for whatever reason. And now we're coming back to it and going, oh yeah, this is brand new. And then you get to talk to the people who've been doing this from the beginning and they're going, oh no, we did that in the 70s. Well, I don't know what you're talking about. Like,
there's all these things that need to be done and need to be changed. But we need to look past and get hope from that. Literally the craziest thing, they designed the modern ambulance. There's just so many things you're just sitting here going, and then they're talking about running around on bald tires. And let me tell you, I've worked for services that had some bald tires, trucks that were, I had a truck one time that I had to leave running the whole weekend because if I shut it off, I had to jump it to restart it.
right. Yeah.
And it's just the world and funding issues and all these things that we're still fighting. And it's not new. And it's like,
And you know what? I'm going to upset a whole lot of people when I say this.
you're welcome to upset people. I'm afraid of speech.
The funding issues that we're currently seeing in EMS have nothing to do with degrees. It has everything to do with how EMS got started.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. God bless you, Kari.
It has everything to do with how EMS got started. That's number one. And number two, how EMS is the only entryway into the medical system that underprivileged individuals still have.
And I'm going to add a third one. And it's because we have been treated as if we are basically just an adjunct of the fire service, that we're not medical providers. We are just basically an adjunct of the fire service, which is nothing against the fire department. Our fire department locally, we run EMS, they do fire, they do some first response. I mean, we've got a great system. But there's so many places that they use that as a way to justify the fire department. And that's not to say there's not good fire EMS. It's just, to me, my personal opinion has always been, it's two jobs. You can't be good at both. That's not a slam against anybody. It's to do a good job, you need to concentrate and specialize. I mean, I've
been a firefighter for 20 years, captain at my department, EMS for 20 years. And the days where I'm captain on the fire engine are the days where I can't be that paramedic because it's two different mindsets. I can't do both at the same time. And so nobody should be expected to do both at the same time. But I sit here and every single time I hear the various other people within EMS saying things like, well, the only way we're going to get reimbursement or better pay is if we have degrees. No, it doesn't matter. A degree does not matter. Getting funding from whomever does not matter. The reason why we get paid the way we do, the reason why we're still mostly volunteer the way we are, the reason why people just use EMS as a stepping stone is all because of how it got started. This is not valued. I mean, we are under NHTSA. We are under the National Highway Administration. We are not under Health and Human Services. We're not under anyone else. We're under the white paper. The white paper.
Yes.
This is exactly why we are the way we are, because we are under the Department of Transportation.
So So this was brought up. You remember the pilot of emergency?
Yes.
Do you remember when Dr. Brackett was talking about, I don't want these firefighters out there doing this, but they're the best chance we've got. We were a stopgap. We were never meant to exist. We were never meant to last. We were a stopgap. And, poor communities are poor communities. You have the same problem in every poor community. Why? Because you're poor. You know, rich people have rich people problems. Poor people have poor people problems.
Right.
That's why I can pick up this book and identify with the characters, even though my skin's different. I've been poor. I'm sitting there understanding, man, you feel like the whole world's against you because you know, you're from a small town, you're poor. And they don't want you to ever change because that's how they know you. You know, you add in all the things that happen. You know, yes, it's important for representation. It's also important to understand that a lot of these problems are so universal. We should all be able to sit there and go, wow, this is still a problem. Mm-hmm. You can tell I'm getting passionate. I love my job.
And I love mine. And I want to be, I've always said, I want to be the little old crotchety medic in a wheelchair at the nursing home, you know, hearing somebody's call light go off and I'm wheeling down the hall with my first in bag, waving a tube, thinking that I'm going to actually do something. I want to be that person. I want to be the 60, 70, 80-year-old medic that's sitting in the back of the station with my cup of coffee and my COVID veteran hat with the scrambled eggs around the bill and talking about the good old days where we had manual stretchers. I mean, but the only way that you, or anyone else can do that is if we, as a community, as the EMS community, confront where we came from, are not afraid to address where we came from.
Not just confront it. I'm going to start tell you. I read this book and I swelled with pride. Mm-hmm. We should be proud of where we came from. We shouldn't just confront it. We should straight up be proud. When I said I would buy this man a drink, I'd buy him an expensive drink and probably break out my paycheck and consider the conversation to just be in his presence, because what he did was amazing, you know? And we need that. We need that more than we need anything else. Because if we can't, I should be able to look at you and call you my sister because we've shared the same problems. We've shared the same fight. We know what it's like to have something people don't understand. We have our favorite homeless people. We have our favorite homeless people. That's something people have no clue about.
They get in the truck and you're like, okay, yeah, here, you want a sandwich? I got an extra sandwich for you because I knew you were going to call today. And we sit and we laugh and then we talk crap. Yeah, we have one that literally, okay. My first conversation will usually involve the swear word, his first name, and what are you doing today? Right. And as soon as you did it, he smiled. You knew that, you know, that's what people don't get. We see people, we have our favorite patients that we see all the time. We have the ones we see and we just, you know, we have relationships with people that nobody else gets. Right. We went from being the stopgap to being the last bastion of community healthcare. And nobody wants to look at us as being that. Nobody wants to look at EMS as being, I mean, Dr. Tam said it best. EMS is healthcare. We are healthcare. And nobody wants to look at us as being healthcare because it would require them to confront their biases about the people that we treat. You know, I've worked in hospitals. I've worked in community-based hospitals. I've worked in trauma centers. And at every hospital, you had the ability to say no to a patient without saying no. Oh, they would see, you know, their name would pop up on the board. Oh, well, they're just here for BS. So they would sit, we're just leave them out in the waiting room. They're either going to leave or we'll see them when we have no more patients. We don't have that. We don't have that at all. When we get called, we go, And we have to be that person's savior, regardless of whatever they are, regardless of who they are, what they believe in. And nobody wants to confront the fact that that's what we are, that we are not so much this, we're no longer the stopgap. We are the entry and the lifeboat. I think about COVID, and I think about how there was all of this going on where, well, how are we going to get vaccines to people? I remember talking about, like, you know, being active on Twitter. All of these doctors, this is, I will never forget the night that LA County talked about how they updated their cardiac arrest protocols. This was very early in the pandemic. This was January 20. This was the early pandemic bit. And they updated their protocols to say that they could pronounce people at home. The doctors and nurses on Twitter lost their shit.
Oh, I remember. And we were all like, we've been doing that for years.
I got interviewed by the New York Times over it. I get to say that. I get to say that I'm a New York Times. I got interviewed by the New York
Did you
Times.
get a blue check mark over it?
I wish. I have to see if Elon will give me a blue check mark for that. But I will never forget it because both of my parents had gotten COVID. So they're in the hospital as I'm fighting this disinformation on Twitter because people are like, oh my gosh, paramedics don't know that. Why are ambulance drivers? That was my favorite. When there was an ER physician, I'm not going to say their name. I will protect the stupid and innocent, who is a part of the NAEMSP, who said ambulance drivers don't know how to pronounce somebody dead. Why should we give them the power to do this? An ER physician who's a part of the NAEMSP, National Association of EMS Physicians, called us ambulance drivers and said we didn't know what we were doing. I remember spending that weekend typing furiously, trying to explain, no, what the hell are you talking about? We've been doing this for years. Like, what are you, like, I started in 2001. Yeah, we were doing it in 2001.
Welcome to modern medicine. Literally, the American Heart Association, who, by the way, is usually about 5 to 10 years behind what's actually going on, in their defense, they can only keep up with so much. But they say, don't move dead people.
Right.
Moving dead people doesn't work, and we all know it. The best CPR, the best everything's done where the patient dies. And, pupils are fixed and dilated. They got rigor mortis. They got dependent lividity. You can't fix these things. You're at that point of, it's over.
Right. You look at them and you're like, okay, there's flies. I don't know what you want us to do with this. But I got interviewed by the New York Times because of everyone losing their shit over it. And somebody from the New York Times went, oh, I've seen you posting about this and you're saying that this is wrong. I want to interview you. Okay. And I was interviewed by them to be able to say, we've been doing this for years. Number one, we've been doing this for years. Number two, all of the people who are sitting here saying that ambulance drivers aren't trained to do this, that we're not trained to read EKGs, that we're not trained to give meds or do intubations, and we're playing God. You're going to get somebody on a scene killed. Point blank. And I mean, I'll never forget doing that interview. It was 4 o'clock in the morning here as I'm being interviewed for this. And that's when it really came to me that nobody, even ER physicians, even ER nurses, even people who are in emergency medicine don't know anything about us because they don't have to, because it's not taught. The reason why it's not taught is because we're the ones who take care of the patients they don't want to take care of.
Yeah, but yet they'll be mad because you didn't start an IV on a patient or you didn't intubate this patient. Had that happen, why didn't you intubate the patient? They were doing fine. They're
Right.
still doing fine. But they want us to do all the things, but then they forget that we can do the things. And
Want us to do all the things, but I mean, look at New York. Look at what the nursing union, there we go, just piss somebody else off. The nursing union in New York didn't want to have a very just normal common update to the New York EMS protocols because, oh, they're going to be treating people without out of hospital or some dumb shit about, oh, well, how dare they treat these patients without oversight.
that's what our medical director's for.
Right. My response to somebody was, can y'all intubate without oversight? Like, like you nurses were so upset about this very normal thing that I went, we have standing protocols. What do y'all have? You know, and not to go full ham on nurses, but I also discovered during the pandemic and spending way too much time on Twitter, just how few people in the medical field actually know what we can do. And that is, once again, because we're our own worst enemies. We don't have good messaging. Our only messaging comes from the fire department. And let's be 100% honest. The people that we have speaking out as our quote unquote spokespeople, there's a bunch of them that are super racist. I'm gonna just call it the way it is. I mean, we all remember our favorite fire chief who got, yeah.
Would this be the one from Memphis or?
The one from Skip.
Ah, Skip.
Yeah.
I always considered him more of an elitist because he was so smart. He was just the smartest guy in the room.
Right.
We were all below him.
Yeah. He was good.
Buddy, I get it. You've got a law degree and a paramedic cert. That's nice.
Right.
But I do this every day. And
yeah, and he got fired a couple of times in a week because of his racist, homophobic, and transphobic comments. But that was the person that we had speaking for EMS.
Well, see, I guess I was blocked by that point.
Yeah, he called me the N-word with the hard ER, like on Gems's Facebook page multiple times. It was awesome. But this
you weren't playing Call of Duty, right?
No.
So
You're not playing.
Real hardcore.
No, this was not a waiting room in Call of Duty.
And I say that because, I mean, let's be honest. That's not right. Attacking someone for any reason in a discussion, one, it shows you've already lost. Right. Let's just be honest. You've lost the discussion. If I have to attack you as a person, you've already determined that your ideas and your points of view have no value. Mm-hmm. I don't always agree with anybody, okay? But I've always learned from those conversations. Heck, even people I don't like, I've learned things from. But I mean, what do I know? I'm just some hillbilly from originally from Muhlenberg County, Kentucky. Okay, you know, as I tell people, I was born white trash. I ain't better than nobody.
Isn't it down near the county where the pastor is also the coroner and he puts the EKG on Jesus on Good Friday and pronounces him dead, and then he
I
gets
don't
over.
know, but that sounds like something that came from. No, Muhlenberg County is mostly known for the late great John Prine
Yes.
and the Everly Brothers,
Yes.
and methamphetamine.
What was it? What was Coke Bear or Meth Bear or whatever the bear that ate? Oh, it's Coke Bear.
Okay, yes.
Having lived in Kentucky now for almost 4 years, I've gotten to see the sites of,
You know,
but you know, my hope, my dream is that we can take EMS into something that we would be proud to leave behind.
I agree.
And as much as it annoys everyone when I say this, the first thing that has to happen is we have to stop harping on degrees. That is going to be the hot.
So funny you should say that. I don't know if you've watched many of my videos, okay? I've actually got a video celebrating when the registry was looking at getting rid of the accreditation process.
Mhm.
Not because I'm against better education, but because it's not working.
Right.
And if you know something's not working, the first thing you need to do is stop doing it. But those who think that having letters behind your name make you better seem to have forgotten that no, what makes you better is learning how to do your job. And if you're not putting out enough people to take care of people, you're going to be in a different type of trouble.
I spent, so Pittsburgh was one of the first places to actually have a degreed medic program. I spent 5 years precepting these degreed medics. I don't know what they were being taught. They weren't being taught how to be paramedics, because I would get them and they would have their clipboard. So this is what I would see. I would see this as they're sitting there with their clipboard and they're furiously writing behind their clipboard, but not be able to do anything, not be able to do treatment, not be able to read a monitor, not be able to, and I would sit there and I would go, okay, well, what do you think is next? What do you think we should do next? Well, I think they're in respiratory distress. Okay. What are we going to do? Oh, well, I think they're in respiratory acidosis. Awesome.
What are you going to do about it?
What are we going to do about this issue? And they would just look at me and they'd go, find out the causes of respiratory acidosis. I'm like, okay, no, we're not doing H's and T's now. Let's start doing. And
Let's make the patient not dead.
Right. And so they had could they repeat the Krebs cycle to me? Sure. Could they treat a patient? Absolutely not.
They don't, and this, maybe it's generational, okay? Maybe it's generational. But it seems like one of the things that they don't teach anymore is how to have a conversation with somebody.
Right.
You find out what's going on with the patient from the patient. You got mom over here. You got sister over here. So what's going on? Something completely different. Because everybody's got their biases, or they're just scared. People are scared because their family member's sick and they want you to help them. But the patient's gonna say, well, it's more like this. And they're like, well, how do I talk to the patient? Talk to them. Sometimes you don't even have a conversation about what's wrong with them. Show them you're human before you show them you're a paramedic.
Right.
Because unless it's got to be fixed right now, taking that moment to have that human interaction takes that uniform off and puts a person forward. Because
Exactly.
way too many people in way too many professions are more concerned about what the uniform says as opposed to what the reality of the person you're dealing with is. And that's why we see so many, that's why so many things that happen look so bad, because they're so busy being the uniform and they're not busy being a person. And then we all put our own biases on there, because when you see something bad happen, like, well, why'd they do that? Well, it's because of that. No. Sometimes you got to take a step back and just be Kari or be Roger or be whoever. Because they call for someone to help them.
Right.
They didn't call for Superman. No one likes Superman. People want a person who can be there for them. I've held little old ladies' hands. I've sit there and had people cry on my shoulder because their partner, the person they've been with for 50 plus years, was never not going to wake up anymore. Mm-hmm. That's the reality of things. You've seen people, you've told them that their daughter or son is no longer going to be there. And you're sitting there. They fell asleep with their kid on their lap and they rolled over and something happened. And this is not, I'm a horrible parent. And you're sitting here going, I did that. And as a father, I did that. And I was lucky nothing happened, because you got a young baby, and you're exhausted and you just fall asleep like a human being. And people forget that all this, it's still a human experience. We're human. We have to be human to people.
Like one of my biggest moments with having that human side was when my brother died. You have this awful moment where, he collapsed. My brother, 27 years old, healthy as a horse, heart arrhythmia, collapses dead before he hits the ground. My sister did CPR on him. We were at my parents' house, our childhood home. So the EMS company that I had worked for as a baby EMT comes and picks him up. Get to the hospital, he's dead. Okay. And that entire EMS crew stayed because they were like, well, we know you, we know your family. And so you have that humanizing moment, because in that moment, it wasn't EMS and patient, it was all one big family. And to see them all, because some of them actually knew my brother, to have that moment of humanity where we're all grieving for the same person. And, but it's the same thing that I did and I take into my practice. I look at everyone as being a human. I look at everyone, regardless of who they are, I look at them as being human. And I've written down a bunch of my adventures in EMS over the years. And one of the stories I tell is about the day that I had to go and take care of two people who were in the KKK. There was actually a KKK meeting going on. That was exciting. And yeah, it was great. It was great. And it was myself, my partner who was Hispanic, and so we were running in a 3-man crew, and my other partner who was Jewish, wearing a yarmulke. Like, you could not, like, it was the start of a bad joke. It was the worst joke ever. But so the three of us who had every reason to turn around and leave. Every reason. We stayed. We stayed, we treated them like humans, even though they weren't treating us like humans, treated them like humans. And we saved people.
And maybe, just maybe you saved a heart. Maybe you saved a soul in the time too.
And even, you know what though, even if I didn't, I still came out of that situation better than when I went it. Because to me, even in the face of something like that, I still treated somebody who wasn't treating me and wasn't treating my partners as human. Because at the end of the day, I take what the Freedom House medics started and I put it forward, which is taking care of people regardless of what they can do for you, regardless of what they've done to you, and regardless of what they could do for you.
The thing that was truly starting to amaze me was by the end of the book, you're seeing how the Freedom House medics were winning over the police, who at one point were afraid they were going to lose their jobs to them.
Right.
And the thing is, we all, in the end, I think most people are decent people. They have differences of opinions, and there's ways to get to those opinions. Now, don't get me wrong, I was raised really weird. I may have told you some of the stories. I mean, we've known each other for a while. I was raised by an old Southern black man and a woman that was married to a black man in the 60s. Okay.
Right. In Kentucky.
Well, no, actually it was in Chicago, which is
okay.
actually worse.
Right. I was about to say, well.
But trust me, I didn't know. I had no clue. I mean, what do I know? I'm a kid who was, I was raised that my dad raised me that his language was awful, but the way he treated people was different. He set an example, and it took me a long time growing up to understand. He was talking how he was raised to talk, but how he treated people is how you treat people. And but we live in a time where people don't understand that context. That was it perfect? No, but it taught me the lessons I really needed to know growing up. That I talk about my dad. He'd say these awful things, language that we consider awful. It was one that was trying to adopt a black kid because the kid had a bad home. I mean, that's the lessons that we should be imparting. That we're supposed to take care of each other, even if you're not the best person in the world. You can see the humanity in others. And I'm sitting here, like I said, this book had me enraptured. I've been having some weird heart issues. And I started having heart issues at work. So, of course, being the lovely and paramedic that I am, I go down to the office to do a 12-week just to make sure.
We've all done it.
I don't want to go to the ER. I literally was debating on just hanging an AMI drip and just getting better and going, okay, because I don't want to go.
Been there, done that.
Sanity takes over, and I go in, and I was been reading on this book, and I literally devour this during my hospital visit.
Right.
And I'm sitting here going, the whole time I'm just on the edge of my seat. My poor wife's like, why aren't you talking about this? Is amazing. Like, this is the best book about and understand. I'm trying to work on I've got to get Perspectives Volume 2. Volume 1 hit home a lot from Kelly Grayson's edited book. But I always liked on his blog. I always loved those Perspectives blogs he did because it definitely showed things from the different points of view of everybody involved.
Absolutely. He's an amazing author. I got his first book en route. That was the very first EMS. That was the very first EMS book I ever read, and it made me fall in love with EMS all over again. It was my mother gave it to me as a gift after I graduated paramedic school, and yeah.
Kelly's another. He is poor white trash who decided to make something better of himself, and that's not a slam in any way.
No.
He is one of the best educators that I know of. He's one of those people that can take the most complex subjects and dumb it down so much that my hillbilly butt can figure it out.
His AV node block that blog post, that got me, I swear that got me through paramedic school. I mean, it was one of the, but Kelly is another person just like you that I'm absolutely thankful to call a dear and close friend. I mean, that's the fun part about blogging. That's why I got into it, because I think of, meeting you, meeting Kelly, Jonathan, like all the people that I've met, just because of that little blog that I wrote and the hilarity of the blog that I always come back to is when I started writing it, I wrote it under a pseudonym. Nobody knew what I looked like. Literally, my avatar was a white German Shepherd. Nobody knew what I looked like.
So you've not told me you were a furry.
Yes, I was trying to tell people I was a furry, but nobody knew who I was. And I will never forget going to my very first conference and actually introducing myself to people. And the hilarity of everyone just looking at me like, wait, you're a medic trauma shear? Hi. Yeah, but it was the hilarity because still, I mean, even at that time, it was still such a male-dominated field. It was still a very white male-dominated field. And yes, there were several female bloggers during that time as well, but it was still such a male-dominated field and a white male-dominated field that having the fly in the buttermilk threw everyone off. And I have the photo still of that very first conference where we're all together taking a group photo, and the running joke, I showed the photo to my husband and he was like, because he was like, oh, well, I'd like to see all your friends. And so I showed him the photo and he's like, well, I could pick you out in a second. I'm like, I know, but that's just what it is. But the embodiment of humanity in our generation of medics is something that I want to get back to.
Yes.
And I feel like we're going to be that generation. So the yous, the me's, the Kellys, the Natalie's, all the people from that generation are going to be the ones who are going to pull EMS out of the death spiral that we're in right now and bring it into something better.
And it needs to. My boss, he's big, big evidence-based medicine person. He brought working cardiac arrest to the area I'm at as a clinical guy. And working them on scene, and where we're at, we've got great results. We have a weird local phenomenon where we have a higher ROS and survival to discharge for using sodium bicarb. Everyone else says don't do it, but here we do it and it works. And do you stop doing it when it works?
No. Keep doing it. If it's weird and it works, it's not weird.
But that's just one of those things that, and we're trying to figure, is it because we get, they're still trying to figure, is it because we just give it early in our protocol? Is it just, because, what are we doing that's right?
Right.
What's Seattle do that's right? What's Austin do that's right? What's Pittsburgh do that's, we all need to know. And no system's going to fit everywhere. That's what, something else. Like, well, we just need to recreate this. You can't recreate it because no place has the same issues. And I was in a really dark or a really bad place with a partner because they kept wanting us to go to the show. I don't understand why you don't have state protocols. And finally, I made some very savage comments, and we won't repeat them on here, involving the state that she came from and their dating preferences. And that we don't do that here, and that we design our protocols based on what each area needs. Because I'm in an urban system. I don't need the long-term protocols that 2 counties over that's going to be transporting for an hour needs. It's a different need, it's a different subset of skills.
And I've worked, and it's funny because I've worked in low income, high minorities. So, the ghetto. I've also worked in the super rural and everywhere in between. And yeah, what works in Pittsburgh, like, everyone laughs at me because I moved to, after I lived in Pittsburgh and sowed my EMS roots in Pittsburgh, I moved to Southern Maryland, super rural. That's where the plantation story comes from. And I had to call for a helicopter. My first call. And I went, how do you call for a helicopter? Like, because I lived in Pittsburgh where you had 30, at the time, there were 32 hospitals within Allegheny County. You couldn't throw a rock without hitting a hospital, and half the time they were level 1s. So I went, what do you mean I have to call a helicopter? Like, here's me. Hi, fire board. Can I get a helicopter, please? Because I had no idea what to do. But, and then now living here in Kentucky, it's the same thing because I'm close enough to Cincinnati, where you can run across the river to go to a trauma center if you want to. If the bridges are working, which that's a conversation you and I will have for another time. But the protocols here would not work in Maryland, and those protocols from Maryland wouldn't work in Pittsburgh.
So I live in Indiana.
What'd you say?
I live in Indiana. We're right across the river from Kentucky. Completely different EMS because of how the states are set up. I can pretty much, if I can get a doctor to say I can do it, I can do it.
Right.
In Kentucky, it's very tightly controlled on what you can do. Like, me, I'm like, oh, we're tubing this patient. You're like, I hope I can get him to the hospital before I have to, because you can't, you have to have 2 medics on scene to even RSI.
Right. You can't cardiovert here, SVT, got in trouble for that one. Oh God, that was a long day. But yeah, but what I would like to see going forward, and something that I am going to push for in my quote unquote twilight years in EMS, is pulling EMS away from NHTSA. NHTSA was great. The white paper, awesome. This is what allowed us the KKK 1956, where the accidental death and dismemberment study, where they realized that you had a better chance of surviving in Vietnam and Korea than you did having an accident on the highway. It is now time to move into the 21st century, and we get under Health and Human Services. We get under all of the appropriate healthcare umbrellas, the medical umbrellas, that we pull ourselves away from the fire department. And here's another hot button word: do exactly what Freedom House did in 1965 and defund the police to give EMS better funding.
But what you're saying is different than what they're using it as.
Right.
You're willing, when people say, in some places it is, I don't know if that we need to find out where the money's coming from. It's kind of what you're saying. And right now, be it police, be it fire, or be it, hey, I'm not one of those people. I'm not one of those red people that's like, I'm against taxes. I'm against taxes going for war. I'm against taxes going for stupid things. But if you want to come up with, hey, we're going to fund this, I think I'm an advocate of either third service or contracted with standards private EMS. Mm-hmm. That's where my belief is, because that gets guys and girls who want to be paramedics and EMTs. They're doing that job, not someone who's just wanting the chance to get on the truck or the engine. Which, like I said, that's not fair to anybody involved.
Excuse me. I look at how much funding fire and EMS has gotten over the years. excuse me, police, fire, and EMS has gotten over the years. And I look at places where police and fire are automatically funded, where EMS has to be voted on. How many states? I mean, EMS is only considered essential in what, 13, 14 states?
I'm not sure. I used to know that number, but you know, I'm old, okay?
Yeah, I don't remember how many it is anymore, but we are not considered essential in 35 states. I know that much. So whatever, do the sketchy medic math, but we're not essential in over 35 states. Why can't we be essential? And why?
I don't know. I carried a piece of paper around all through COVID that said that I was essential.
I know, so did I. Like we all did. We all carried. Oh God, Rob's COVID passport so that he could travel. I've never laughed so hard in my life over that one. I went, when he showed me, he's like, yeah, I have to have this to travel. And I went, we're not going to talk about how creepy that is, but okay.
We can sit here and someday have a great one making fun of some of the stuff that happened during COVID, because you know what?
I mean, if you're just across the river from Kentucky, we can go to a bourbon bar and we can have an absolute blast laughing about some of this stuff.
Yes.
But
I think we should record it. I think we need to both find a time, have a drink, record it, and broadcast it and laugh.
Oh my!
Plus, I'm trying to grow this whole YouTube thing, so you know. Hey, by the way, anyone who's watching this, like, share, subscribe, please. Thank you. But
give a thumbs up.
I'm all for sitting there drinking.
Have you watched the movie Ambulance?
Huh?
Did you watch the phallic advertisement known as Ambulance?
No. That being said, I also didn't watch. As a medic who worked in the old Gulf of Mexico, I did not watch Deepwater Horizon either, for different reasons. Because I was literally in the Gulf during Deepwater Horizon, which my wife will tell you is one of the scariest days ever, because I didn't get to call her till about 7:30, 8 o'clock. So I was on a different job than my normal job. So she had no idea. She was like, is that the one he's on?
Oh no. No, Ambulance, the phallic advertisement known as Ambulance, the thriller, that we need to get drunk and watch that one. That's
We
one.
need to see if that's an Amazon Primeable watch party.
We
have to get Twitch just to do that, because it would be hilarious.
It is. It's on Amazon. I watched it with Rob.
Now I got to start a Twitch channel.
I watched it with Rob, and he's just looking at me and he's like, is this real? No. Is that? No. Is this? No. It is when I tell you it is the funniest. Oh my gosh, we will have to watch it. I laughed the entire time, got drunk and watched it. It was played a drinking game. How many things did the EMT do that no EMT or paramedic could do?
You know what? That's kind of like Chicago Fire when they told someone was in VFib by checking a pulse. Yeah, I'm done.
What is it? Lone Star 911 or 911 Lone Star?
And as big of a crush as I had on Liv Tyler, I cannot watch that show. I cannot watch any EMS shows without yelling at the television.
We need to get all of us together, and that's what we need to do. We need to do a Twitch stream where we all watch like an episode and get stupid, like play a drinking game and get stupid drunk. Yeah, I watched 911 Lone Star, and my very first thing was, so how can we shoehorn every woke meme into an EMS state, a fire and EMS station at the same time?
You know what the funny thing is?
For
the most part, 99% of people in EMS are at one time the most accepting group of people, as long as you're one of us, but yet the least woke people in existence, because woke doesn't work when you know reality.
Right.
You're like, people are people.
Right. You will sit there and you can literally have a station that is 99% red wave Republican white men, and then you have like the one affirmative action hire female. Like
I've been the affirmative action hire before.
So have I. My middle name, my nickname was Token for a very long time.
But I worked in a small town in Illinois called Cairo. Cairo is a inner city. All the pros of an inner city, literally 40 miles from a hospital. And they tried to see the way they wanted to see how I would work out. They started the first day, they screwed with me. I screwed back. I was fine. I made a joke that today would get me fired anywhere. But because I had and it was literally just making fun of the situation, because the first thing, so use our new white boy from my partner. This guy does not talk like that. He played it up. So I made fun of it. I laughed with it. I went with it. They decided this guy doesn't care. We're going to have fun. And then I was involved in the jokes on, there was a guy who worked there that was rather bigoted. And there was a local reverend of the Sharpton Jackson ilk, not a good pastor, just someone who liked to.
Right.
The black guys impersonated him, called the other guy about a complaint. And I'm sitting there, they're letting me, this big, goofy, at the time, 350-pound hillbilly, right there amongst it, because I fit in. I sit there and laughed and joked and was part of the crew. That's how it should be. We should be able to laugh and joke and love each other.
When I was working in Maryland, I mean, this is southern Maryland, and we were driving past a cotton field.
Oh Lord.
And it's just me and 5 other white people.
What'd you do? Because I know you, and it's gonna be bad.
I sang a certain song that talks about picking cotton, and they almost wrecked the QRV. But because it was truly like, they're showing me the area, and it was one of those things where, how people get really uncomfortable because they have no idea how you're going to react. It was my first day. It was truly my first day with this group of people, and they're showing me the area, and we come up upon this cotton field where there's a plantation. There's an actual plantation on it, and it's one of those you can go and visit it because we're turning slavery into Disneyland. It was like Plantation Disney or whatever. And
at least it keeps the history that these bad things happened alive in a way that people can actually understand. These awful things happen, and we need to acknowledge these awful things happen.
True, but when you see literal white people working in the fields singing Negro spirituals, it was a little awkward. But that's why I had to
I get that. I get it.
Because it was this awkward moment that everyone's just kind of like, they're looking at me, but not looking at me because they're trying to figure out how I'm going to react to this. And I'm like, well, I have one of two choices. I can get offended, or I can let everyone get offended and laugh at the same time. So I picked let's let everyone get offended and laugh at the same time. But that doesn't mean that anyone's less woke. It is just, sometimes you have to roll with it. And I think that's where EMS also gets the bad rap, is because nobody understands the level of dark humor that you sometimes need to just get through the day.
I just, like I said, most people, you would never classify me as what you would consider woke. And I never even realized this till one day I realized I've got some of the most diverse friends that you ever meet, but I didn't go out looking for black friends or trans friends or gay friends. I just meet people I like, and I collect my crew. I work with a bouncy, mouthy, short, cute 21-year-old blonde.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we've worked together for 2 years now. And we had to deal with at least one accusation of inappropriate between the two of us, which no, that's not how I work.
Right.
And that's just one. I just found someone who I love working with because she wanted to learn.
Mhm.
You give me someone who is willing to learn and wants to learn and actually has the right attitude for this job, I'm going to move heaven and earth for that person because this job means something.
Right.
And she wound up being my wife. My husband. I'm half expecting to come in with Roger gone and her doing laundry because she lives in an apartment like a mile from here. I'm like, well, she may be there, but she's probably petting the dog because it's EMS.
You have to pet the dog.
ABCs, ABCD, airway, breathing, circulation. Do you have any dogs?
I'm always the one in the corner, like I'm petting the dog. I'm taking care of the patient, but I'm also petting the dog because the dog's really cute. But, and you know what? And that's why I get so frustrated or frustrated and upset when everyone has this idea of EMS being this off-color, awful group of people that's, super racist and super sexist. And I'm sitting here going, if you saw, taking the photo of everyone from 2000, it was like 2010, 2011. If I took that photo and I sat it down and explained to every single person who was in that photo and exactly their demographics, most people would go, wow, this is a really diverse group of people. Yeah, just because we're not color diverse, just because it looks like a bowl of buttermilk and there's one fly in it, like we're still one of the most diverse and yet people focused group of people. And that's what we need to get back to. And that's why I love American Sirens. That's why I love the fact that we're getting back into seeing our roots, because our roots show exactly where we came from. It shows EMS started to right wrongs. And so we need to keep going and righting the wrongs.
So, Kari, this one I'm going to have to wrap up here soon. Not because I don't want to. Jesus, I've lost track of time. I just looked at it like, oh,
I did too. I was like, oh wait.
we've got to do this again. We will keep
absolutely.
I'm going to make this a series. I've got to because, first of all, once more, I love talking to you, and you're one of those people. I've not talked to Kari in a while. How's she doing? And you do the same thing,
right?
You'll reach out. Hey, how are you and your wife doing? Because you know some of the tragedies in my life, and that's what EMS is all about. And the brotherhood and sisterhood we really do have. We're just really bad at showing it.
Yeah, we will get together at a conference. I think about, I miss the conferences because people that we would not see for 2-3 years, and you put us in the same room with some alcohol and we're like the best of friends. And you would think that that the last time we saw each other was 2 days ago. And you know what? It's great because there's a lot of, I can send you, like there was a paper that was done that I printed out about Freedom House, and there's a lot of other
I want to know more about this. We are going to have more about this history of this and more about how it affects us to this day. Like I said, the very fact the curriculum that I learned under and you learned under was built by these people and the amazing things they did. And God, if Chief Moon sees this, hey, dude, you're amazing. I'll buy you a beer. Kevin Hazard, I'll buy you one too. I mean, this needed to be written years ago. You want to talk about Black history? This is Black history. This is Black people doing amazing things. It's what we need to talk about. Quit talking about what people can't do. Look what they've done.
Exactly. We've come so far to let it. I guess my closing is, EMS has come so far. We have come so far. We went from being 25 Black men and women just doing the best they could for their families, to now being the front line of medicine, not just emergency medicine, of medicine, whether it's community medicine, emergency medicine, whatever. And we can't let that go. We can't let it go. We can't let it fall to somebody else. We have to keep it going. And that's my job, is to keep it going. So
We're gonna explore this further.
absolutely.
Kari, thank you for your time.
You're very
I
welcome.
need to
Thank
find-
you.
My wife and I are talking about, a weekend trip to Cincinnati anyway. So we're gonna make a point to sit down and have a conversation. And that was just gonna have some way too much alcohol, way too many bad scores, and probably offend somebody, and have a good time doing it.
That's the best part. Come on down. You can pet the dogs. I got bourbon. We'll have some fun.
You have a good one, and bless you.
You too. Great talking to you.
Bye.